It's time for another episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina, featuring industry outlooks, panel discussions on trending topics, and interviews with business executives, community leaders, and government officials. And now, coming to you from the Drum Creative Studio, here's your host, longtime South Carolina business publisher, Rick Jenkins.
Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. If you manage a recently formed small business, or maybe you're in the process of starting a new business, don't go anywhere. This episode is made with you in mind. We will be talking with several experts today who will share plenty of advice for all you entrepreneurs out there. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at the Bank of Travelers Rest. The Bank of TR has been helping small business owners get their start since 1946. Rance Bryan, a senior vice president at the bank, will join us shortly. Today's episode is being produced in conjunction with the South Carolina Small Business Development Centers. The SBDC assists thousands of business owners every year with a wide range of no-cost consulting services. Here to tell us all about it is that organization's State Director, Michele Abraham. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You're from over in Columbia, right? That's where you sit, and you
Correct.
made our studio, of course, is in Greenville. You made the trip over, and I do appreciate the time.
Oh, happy to do it.
Well, good. I want to talk about SBDC, of course, in a variety of ways, but let's just start with that little elevator speech. Now, I remember you telling me before there's at least one in every state, and around 60 or so total. Tell us about SBDC.
Sure. So it's a program that was started by the U.S. Congress in 1979. So there are 63 programs, at least one in every state and territory of the U.S. And we are basically an economic development engine. We're hosted in most states by institutes of higher education, a lot of synergy there for training and education. But we're really here to help entrepreneurs start and grow and sustain successful businesses over time.
You said that you are that each SBDC is tied in some way to an educational institution. I would assume you guys are tied to the University of South Carolina. One, because you're in Columbia, and two, because I know your email is a Darla Moore School of Business email. Is that right?
Well, we're actually in South Carolina unique in that we have a consortium of 4 hosts.
Okay.
So it's University of South Carolina, Clemson, Winthrop up in Rock Hill, and then South Carolina State University in Orangeburg. So we have offices located at all of their campuses, as well as some other colleges and universities around the state.
How's the organization funded?
Our primary funding comes through Congress, and it's administered by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And then it requires match funding. So the bulk of that match funding comes to us through the state of South Carolina, directly through the legislature and some through the Department of Commerce.
So all public funding?
Mostly. We do get some private funding as well, but the big portion of our match to the federal funds comes from the state.
Got it. There are 2 main groups of folks that you all assist, and one of them are folks who manage small businesses just in general. But you also help folks that are kind of in that process of maybe starting their own business. And so you got 2 different groups going on. Tell us about how that works.
Well, our primary focus is on those businesses that are already set and that are in that next stage of growth. And one of the reasons that we decided to put that focus on what we do is because there are a lot of organizations out there that help those entrepreneurs that are just getting started, but there have been very few in South Carolina that really help them grow to the next level. And through SBA and their definition of small business, it doesn't exactly have to be what most people would think of, as a small mom and pop kind of business. It could be hundreds of employees.
That's right.
So we have specialty services like helping people get into government contracting, international trade, new product development, strategic planning, people that really have a lot of expertise in those areas that really focus on growing those existing businesses. And then we have folks around the network who focus more on the early stage businesses. It's a new entrepreneur. They've got, a great maybe small business they've been doing some things with informally, but they've never really set the business up, or they're just trying to get it launched. And so we will help them as well to work on that.
You can help with things as basic as a business plan to get things going, right?
Absolutely. And that is key. When somebody's starting out, every business needs a business plan. And if you're even thinking about going after financing, you've got to have a business plan. That's what the lenders will look for.
Exactly. And let's talk about financing for a second. You, of course, don't recommend that someone goes to this bank or that bank. However, you can help with the process of obtaining capital.
Absolutely. So we don't loan money, but we know virtually every lender in South Carolina, plus some other ones out there.
Yeah.
And what we do is try to help the business owner, first of all, understand how much do I really need, and am I going to be able to pay this back when I get it? And so based on what their needs are, then we kind of help them determine where can you go, what lender is going to have a product that fits your needs. So we will give them several options, and then they can go out and investigate that. But we actually also will sit down and help them, do the business plan, chart out their course, put together all of the components for a loan application, including understanding all the financials, which is a big piece of that, doing projections of where they think the business is going to go, the profit and loss, all of those kinds of things. And so we get them ready to go to the banker and sit down and give them the package and explain their plan.
And as time goes on, you assist, I'm assuming, with financial management. I mean, what you're talking about is helping manage those finances, at least as you look forward. But that doesn't stop at the beginning, right?
Absolutely. We'll work with a business owner for just as long as they need us. We tell them we're kind of like, we're an extension of your business, and we're kind of like a lawyer or an attorney you would keep on retainer, except you don't pay us. So it's the best of both worlds. So yes, they'll come to us, and we will sit down with them and do an assessment, figure out what are their short-term needs, develop a plan to get through that, and then look at longer term. Where do you need to go? Help them develop a strategic plan, a long-term plan, and then walk them through all of those steps as they need it. And we tell them, if you haven't met with us in a year and something comes up, come back. You're always welcome.
Your consultation services are free.
Absolutely.
I do think, though, that there are a few things that you charge a minimal amount for, like maybe extended seminars or that kind of thing.
Yeah, the one thing generally that we will charge for, and not always, is for educational seminars and workshops. So most of the things that we do online, there's been a lot more of that since COVID. Most of those we don't charge for, but some of the in-person sessions we'll charge as little as $10 up to $25, $35, maybe $50 if it's several hours long. If it's an extended, like a 10-week program, it may be $200 or $300, but extremely affordable. Nothing like, going out to the private sector or for an educational degree and what you're going to pay.
What a bargain, though, right?
It is.
What a bargain.
It is.
So on this show, and coming up here just shortly, and I told everyone, our viewers, about this at the onset, is we're going to be talking to a banker, a CPA, an attorney, a marketer, and an IT executive. Those are the types of folks, when I think about putting a business together, and those are the folks that I have questions for, right? And so if someone is coming to you all and they have these types of questions, how do you all direct them to these types of folks?
Well, first of all, one of the things that it's good for people to know is our network. We have about 55 people. Almost everybody has been or is a small business owner, so they've walked the walk. But what we will do is give them access to anybody in the network. So there's one person who will primarily work with them, but anyone else in the network that has specific skill sets will bring in. So there may be a team of people working with a client at any point in time. And we do have people that work in, marketing and sales growth strategies and some of those other specialties, things like that. But we also maintain a list of outside providers who we believe, we've vetted and we feel are good quality, affordable people that they could go to. And so we'll give them several options. We'll never send them just to one. We don't want to have any perception of a conflict of interest.
It sounds like, even though I understand you provide several options, but you do have preferred vendors, preferred partners, let's say. Just because you've done business with folks a whole lot, right? Bank of TR, as you mentioned, they're a longtime partner.
Right.
So I would assume you do have preferred partners of a sort.
Probably internally, yeah, because, just people that we've worked with longer and we're really confident that they're not going to take advantage of a business owner. One of the worst things that we see is somebody comes to us and they've spent $10,000 or $15,000 to get a website created that could have been done for $300. That's the kind of thing we try to help them avoid and navigate through what the options are out there. So yes, as we get to know vendors and we have experience with them and we know they're going to do a good job and treat somebody fairly, and if there's an issue, correct the issue, then we definitely, they're high on our list.
I'll get you out of here on this, Michele. Not only do you help folks in the beginning, but as I understand it, you help them for however long that they need assistance. So for small business owners or for folks who are managing small businesses, it doesn't just end with getting off the ground.
Absolutely. And that of everything is probably one of the most important things that we do, because, when you're a small business owner, you don't have hordes of staff surrounding you to do all these things. And that's what we come in beside you and try to be to you, is all of those resources and those departments that a big corporation has that you can't afford to bring people in to do. So, we have clients that we've worked with for 15 or 20 years. Wow. And, they get ready for another growth spurt or they have another need or an issue and they come back and we just continue to work with them. A lot of our existing clients, we will do an annual checkup with them and we have a lot of market research capability. So we'll do a market assessment and give them an update on, how are they doing relative to everybody, their competitors in the market, and what are some things they might want to be looking at, that kind of thing.
What a wonderful resource you guys are. It was great to get to know you a little bit. I appreciate it.
Yes, you as well. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. Folks, that is Michele Abraham. She is the state director for the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be talking with a few of our industry experts. We'll be back in about 60 seconds.
I bet you want a website that drums up business. You see, every business wants to have an effective online presence that helps their business grow. We guide you through our process that will drive results by clarifying your message with a beautiful design that's strategically optimized for search. Stop wasting your time and money on an ineffective website and let us help you drum up business by designing a website that speaks to your audience and delivers results.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. It's good to have you today. Today's episode is dedicated to providing information, insight, and advice for small business owners as well as entrepreneurs who are in the process of starting their own business. This episode is produced in conjunction with the South Carolina Small Business Development Center, and it is brought to you by the Bank of Travelers Rest. If you are preparing to start your own business, you will likely need an attorney at some point. Joining me now is Doug Lineberry. He is a partner at Burr and Forman, and they are one of the premier firms in the Southeast. Doug, welcome to the show, pal.
Thank you, Rick. Glad to be here.
It's good to have you. So, the folks that we're talking to today are small business owners, people who are thinking about a business, people who are getting ready to get into a startup. Now, I know from some experience that when you start a business, you don't always know what you don't know. What is it that people need to think about when they're starting a business? You got to register your company, so forth and so on.
You really do. The first thing you want, Rick, is corporate protection. It's the shield between you and the wolves. Have an LLC, an S Corp, C Corp, whatever you need. No general partnerships, no solo prac, no using your wallet to be the insurer. That is basic step number 0. Step number 1 is clear your branding. If you're going to have a company, you're going to be dealing with consumers, you're going to have trademarks. That is a tenet of business that you have to address. Do not guess. Do not go into a situation where you haven't cleared your company name or your logo. If you don't take these precautionary steps, you have a high likelihood of possibly receiving a cease and desist letter if you were too confusingly similar as to what we use in the art. But if you're too confusingly similar to someone, they'll ask you to stop. They may not ask nicely.
Right. Let's go back for a second. You mentioned there are different ways to open up a business. You can have an LLC, you can have a partnership, you can have an S Corp. And there's other ways you can do. From a legal perspective, is there one that's better than the other?
We typically see a lot of small businesses or LLCs just due to the simplicity of setup, low cost of maintenance. That's usually a preferred model for a small business.
Right. Let's talk about intellectual property, and you are an expert in IP. And so the first thing I want to define it, we understand some of it, right? A logo is easy to know, but there are a lot of pieces to intellectual property. Give me a rundown.
Well, there's the unseen, your trade secrets. These are the things that make the business go that you don't want people to know about.
Right.
Your customer lists, your expansion plans, the secret formula that you use to make your cookies. These have to remain hidden, but they've got to remain protected. You don't leave them laying out on a cabinet. You don't give full access to everybody in the company. This is one massively overlooked area for a small business. They're concentrating on business. They want to get the work done, but they've got to remember, hey, you can't tell everyone everything. Next, your copyrights. We're talking your websites. We're talking if you've got a logo. If you have a slogan, you want to make certain that you own the copyrights to your goods. A quintessential problem are a lot of businesses start with a handshake. Handshakes turn into fistfights. We want things in writing. And you want that also at day zero. None of this, let's go into it hoping for the best. Let's go into it planning and taking steps so that if something does happen in the future, it's been addressed in a document, or at least there's a basic understanding of what's been agreed to.
I would guess that some things you should trademark at step zero, as you say, but there might be other things that you want to wait as time goes on to see how things play out within your company.
Absolutely. If you've got a bunch of different product names, hey, you can put a superscript TM on that, sort of build the fence around it in a common law perspective. But if you go a couple years out and you're like, hey, I'm not using those names, that was a great call. You didn't trademark them, you didn't use the money. But if you do have product names that you're using after a while and you're like, I like this one, I'm not going to change, those are the ones you want to revisit and be like, hey, it might not be my McDonald's Golden Arches, but it's my Big Mac. And so I want to protect it now that I know it makes me money.
Right. Makes sense. Other than intellectual property concerns, what's another reason that a young entrepreneur just getting started might want to call someone like you?
Sure. There's going to be a nasty tendency to do things on the cheap. You're going to jump onto a computer. You're going to ask ChatGPT to make you contracts. You're going to ask it to make agreements. That is a bad plan. Do not do it. AI are basically, everybody likes to think they're intelligent. They're not. They're information collaborators. They go out, they pull from here, they pull from there. Legal contracts cannot be formed like that. We're in South Carolina. We're in the 4th Judicial Circuit. Our documents won't work in California. California documents won't work here. Same for New York. Do not, as a small company, think, hey, I'll just pull it off the internet and it'll be okay. Right. That is a terrible misconception.
Yeah. Good stuff. Doug, I appreciate your time.
Glad to be here, Rick.
Folks, that's Doug Lineberry. He is a partner at Burr and Forman. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next expert in just a sec. Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. Thank you for joining us. Today's episode is dedicated to providing information, insight, and advice for small business owners as well as entrepreneurs who are in the process of starting their own business. The episode is produced in conjunction with the South Carolina Small Business Development Center, and it is brought to you by our friends at the Bank of Travelers Rest. And speaking of those guys, if you are starting a new business, you just might need to secure some startup capital, and that means you'll need to find a banker. And how to provide, here to help us provide some advice on how to do just that is Rance Bryan. Rance is a Senior Vice President with the Bank of Travelers Rest. Rance, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It is good to have you. And first and foremost, thank you to Bank of TR for helping make it possible for us to produce this content today.
Absolutely. No, we're happy to do it.
Good. One of the first things that a business owner needs, that he might need to be thinking about is securing some capital. Some folks need to, some folks don't. But that could be a little bit of a daunting process. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know in terms of how to get started.
Sure.
Give our viewers an idea of what that process looks like.
Sure. No, absolutely. When somebody comes in to start their business and kind of has an idea of what they want to do and is seeking financing to help with that, probably the first question I'd ask is, what's the money for? So let's see what line of business you're in. For example, if you're a construction industry and maybe need a truck or some equipment or things of that nature, or if you're more service related and maybe need more working capital, just that question will help put us on the path of what financing options we may have. So once we kind of understand that and kind of what the budget is that you're looking for from a financing standpoint, just having some basic financial information together. So maybe a tax return or a very basic financial statement of things of those nature, so we can start to see, if you can make a down payment, kind of what that would look like, or things of that nature. So having a little bit of info around your financial situation, the budget, and kind of what your overall project looks like are pretty important.
It sounds like it's a conversation.
Certainly.
Right. It sounds like, let's sit down and talk about this, and a little bit of a partnership probably has to develop there. I would think you got some folks that are going to come in and ask for a few bucks, and some are going to come in and ask for a whole lot of money. If you need a little more capital than others, do you need to have a business plan with you?
A business plan is a great tool to have. And I like to see those because it shows me that someone has taken the time to put their ideas down on paper and really think through them. So I will say my little secret with business plans is the first thing I'm going to do when I get one is read your executive summary. So that first page, and really hope to get a good feel and understanding of your business and what it is you're looking to do. And then usually I'll flip right to the financials and see if the financials that you provided kind of support your executive summary, because everything in the middle should go to support your executive summary and your financials. So I'll kind of flip to those two things to make sure that both of those are in conjunction.
Do you have a format that you prefer?
Honestly, I say shorter is better. Yeah. So it really doesn't need to be in depth or a thesis on what it is you're trying to do, because when you're speaking with your customers, you need to be able to synopsize what it is that you're trying to do in your business in about a minute or two. Right. It really doesn't need to be a 27-page drawn out, really involved document there. It could really be. I kind of like short and sweet.
Right. Makes sense. And I mentioned a minute ago that it seems that a relationship and a partnership with a banker is really paramount. I want to know, I want to have good rapport with my banker. And so if there is someone out there looking for a banker, what are the types of things that they should consider when they are weighing options of banks?
Sure, most certainly. One of the things, and specifically working with Bank of Travelers Rest, we're community focused. So if you have a business that you plan to start here and focus on local businesses and local customers, I think we would be an excellent fit for you. If you have aspirations to do something beyond and internationally and things like that, maybe there might be some other financial institutions that would be a fit for you. But I think kind of going back to that initial conversation, like you said, really helps develop that rapport between the customer and the banker, because I want to know what your background is, why you decided to start this business, how long have you been in the area, just some general info like that. And I love it when I get those questions in return to make sure that we're going to be a good fit and kind of get to know each other, because there needs to be a level of trust there that we're going to have to develop going forward.
Right. When people start a new business, they always don't know what they don't know, so to speak, right? I mean, we all think about that from time to time, regardless of whatever it is we're doing. We just don't know what it is that we don't know. And so in terms of opening a bank account, what is it that folks need to understand? You got to make decisions about bank accounts and a credit card and a checking, maybe a savings, and those types of things. What should they know?
Sure. Again, kind of going back to our previous question, is what exactly are you trying to accomplish with this business, and what are you looking to do? So, for example, if you need your standard business checking account, then some of the additional options, you may need a remote deposit option there, so that you can just take an image of your deposits and have those deposited directly into your account. Some other features such as ACH or wire or origination, things of those nature, would also be extremely helpful. So some of the other benefits beyond just a standard checking account or maybe savings account that would kind of tailor fit the type of business that you have are really important and available through most financial institutions.
Again, it comes down to conversations with your banker and just spelling those types of things out.
Exactly.
I'll get you out of here on this, Rance. Any advice for new business owners or small business owners in general?
Absolutely. I think Greenville and the upstate is very supportive of entrepreneurs, and there are a lot of resources in our area that can help support those individuals. Certainly, the Small Business Development Center is a great place to start. They do a terrific job. The Greenville Chamber does a terrific job as well, helping plug you into the area. Clemson University through the higher ed and master's MBA program that they do there, as well as Forman with their entrepreneurship and innovation program. So a lot of different resources out there, and don't be afraid to reach out and kind of ask for help, because that's what those folks are looking to do.
The Small Business Development Center, they have offices throughout South Carolina, so regardless of where you're located, whether it be the upstate, the Midlands, or the Low Country, geographically there is a place there that you can go to get assistance. Check them out on the website. Plenty of info there. Rance, thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Folks, that's Rance Bryan. He is Senior Vice President at Bank of Travelers Rest. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next expert in just a second. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. I'm glad you could join us today. Today's episode is dedicated to providing information, insight, and advice for small business owners as well as entrepreneurs who are in the process of starting their own business. This episode is produced in conjunction with the South Carolina Small Business Development Center, and it's brought to you by our friends over at the Bank of Travelers Rest. Regardless of size, one thing every company needs is some type of marketing plan. You might need a full-blown plan and a well-thought-out strategy, or maybe you just need some guidance on developing a social media presence, or maybe to put together a website. Regardless of whatever it is, though, that you need a marketing guy. And I got a marketing guy here with me. His name is Joe LaPenna. He is the longtime owner of Drum Creative. Joe, how are you, pal?
I'm good. How are you, Rick?
I am doing well. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump right into it. So we are talking today to small business owners or maybe people who are thinking about starting their own business. And everybody needs a marketing plan of some sort. You got to think about it. But let's talk directly to those people who don't have a big budget, but they got to do something. Where do you begin?
It's a good question. A lot of companies, when they come to us and they're having a conversation and they're just trying to feel things out about pricing and trying to get a good understanding or a good grasp of what it costs, usually I'm trying to feel out where they're at. And if you're going to go ahead and get started, like say, for example, you want to sell a product, and I say go ahead and get started on Shopify, or you want to go ahead and do like a small business thing and you can go on Squarespace or something like that, and you're paying, $26 a month for something like that. And those are good. But then what you run into is you end up spending a lot of time learning how to build, how to design, and you don't have experience as a designer because you're selling this product and or you're doing this service. And so you spend gobs of hours. So then what I always say is you have to create value. Like, what value do you bring when you actually run your business? How much money do you make if you're out there selling versus going and spending all this time trying to figure out how to design and build a website on your own?
I have heard you say before that a website should be your best salesperson.
Absolutely.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. To me, a lot of people, when they build a website, they're talking about their core values. They're talking about their mission, vision, how long their grandfather started this company 75 years ago. Yeah. And nobody cares about any of that stuff. I mean, it's great, but the problem is that they want to know, hey, do you understand what problem I have? And can you help guide me to success? Mm-hmm. That is simply it. And we're building websites talking about ourselves and this and that we do, but we're making ourselves the hero of the story when in reality the customer is the hero of the story.
Right.
And so that's how we build a message that is engaging, or you want to build a message that engages with your audience with calls to action. They shouldn't have to look for it or have to find it.
Right. A website can be expensive.
It can.
But I would assume that you can probably do a website in stages maybe. And so somebody just getting started out, they don't have to add a ton of bells and whistles. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes we'll have a conversation with a client and say, hey, what are the things you need today? And let's work on those things. And then if we want to add stuff later on down the line, we most certainly can do that. So yeah, you can build in stages. We work in WordPress. So WordPress, with it being a content management system, you can always add later on down the line. And you don't have to feel like you have to do it all up front. It does cost more over time, but there's a huge advantage in doing that. When people come into like wanting to facelift, like, hey, I just want to do like these little tweaks and changes and change the look and feel. It just feels dated or whatever. Those are very high tension conversations only because they think that it's just a simple tweak here and there, but really it's a complete rebuild and redesign of a website. So that will happen later.
I hear you. So social media, It's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. As a matter of fact, it has gotten bigger since the show started. And sometimes it's hard to know what to do, where to go, what to use, what not to use.
Yeah, there's 5 things that that I look at when talking to people about social media. Like, I'll tell them, here's my advice when it comes to that. You don't need to make any kind of official announcement when you're getting started. Don't overthink any of it. Just start posting. Keep it real simple. You have to commit to the content. Being consistent is one of the key things to actually getting good social media exposure. People are looking for it, and especially if it's in a niche that you're in that you can speak to, then you need to be consistent with it. And then you need to be the face of your brand. You don't want to hire somebody out to be the face of your brand, or maybe an employee that works for you to be the face of your brand. You need to be the face of your brand because you'll be there the whole time. Later on, what if that employee leaves or something? Then it's a little awkward. It's like, now we got somebody new. Then you need to pay attention to the platform. Paying attention to the platform could be like, what is the right thing for you to do? Are you good at talking to the camera? Are you good with being like, you're a verbal person and you can be that authoritative, or are you a good writer? What's your strength? And then pay attention to what platform would work best for you. And then you want to make sure, it's kind of funny that we started with the website, right? You want to make sure that the back end is built first. Right. So before you get into social media, have a website to draw them to. Yep. We got to get them there. We need to be able to collect their email address. And then you want to build email campaigns and all that other stuff so that you're now marketing to them because you drove them in from social media. So in social media, they're going to want to know, where can I find you? Where can I find your product? How do I buy now? And so we have to drive them to a website.
Right. Good information. Joe, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Folks, that's Joe LaPenna. He is the owner of Drum Creative, and he is our marketing guy. Don't go anywhere, because coming up is our CPA, our tax guy. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. Glad you could join us today. Today's episode is dedicated to providing information, insight, and advice for small business owners, as well as entrepreneurs who are in the process of starting their own business. This episode is produced in conjunction with the South Carolina Small Business Development Center, and it is brought to you by our friends over at the Bank of Travelers Rest. One of the very first things a new business owner will need to do is to find a CPA. So let's get some advice from our tax expert. His name is John Price. He's a managing member at Scott & Company. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick.
It's good to have you here. Let's get right into it. When you are starting a new business, a CPA guy is one of the first ones that you reach out to. And there are all kinds of tax implications depending on how you set up your business, whether that's an LLC or a partnership or an S-Corp or whatever have you.
Right.
Any advice on which one of those someone might choose, and what are the differences from a tax perspective?
Well, first thing is going to depend on how many owners are you going to have.
Yep.
Is it just going to be one, or are you going to have multiple owners? So if you're going to one owner, I would probably recommend you set up as an LLC. That's not necessarily a tax thing, but just a legal liability. There's no reason not to have one of those, because it's not going to really change anything for tax purposes. But you would set up an LLC, then you could either be a sole proprietor, and probably starting out, unless you're going to really be big really fast, it's probably a good thing. And then you would, as a sole proprietor, you pay your taxes. If the business doesn't really pay taxes, it's you're the individual. So that just gets reported on your 1040. And you go on with that there. If you're multiple owners, you can still set up an LLC. But then you can either be treated as a partnership, or if you wanted to, an LLC then has the ability to make an S election, be an S corp. And it's just a matter of how the difference between a partnership and an S corp is. A partnership, the partners get compensated regardless of it's all self-employment income, regardless of whether they get a check or they don't get a check. As an S corp, you're going to be treated like you're an employee, and you're going to get a W-2. You'll have taxes paid withheld and that kind of thing, and then you have whatever's left over gets taxed for income purposes. So it's there's all kind of ways of going about it.
Right. And let's just stick there for a second. You're talking about an S corp and taxes and employees and that kind of thing. You got to pay taxes. You got to pay employee taxes if you have employees, and you got to pay self-employment taxes for yourself. And so you're going to need to be setting aside some of that money as time goes on. Advice on how much to set aside and how do you?
I mean, you
that?
should probably, if you're self-employed, you need to be setting aside 30% of your net income, not your gross, because would be too much. But 30% of your net income, and if you're, like I said, if you're self-employed, then you're going to need to pay those taxes quarterly through what we call estimated tax payments, and so that's due in April, June, September, and January. If you're an employee, you're able to then have taxes withheld from your salary and all that, so you don't necessarily have to make estimated tax payments. But if you're truly self-employed, that's when you should do it, and that's about how much you should at least set aside.
And what does that process look like? You got a form to fill out, and is it pretty easy to
submit
that?
It's a Form 1040 ES for federal, and it's kind of similar for South Carolina, and then you just write in the amount that you're going to send in and mail with a check, pay online. It's all different ways to pay things now.
Let's talk about company cars for a sec. There's a couple different ways you could classify a vehicle that might be used for business purposes. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so if you're self-employed and you have a car that's kind of in your name, then or it could be in the business name, you can to start off, you can either treat it as take the deductions on the actual method or the standard mileage rate. So the actual method means that you're going to set up the cost of the car, the truck. You're going to take your oil changes, your gas, your insurance, your property taxes, your interest if you financed it, all those things. That's the actual method. And then you have to keep up with all those receipts from day one until you're through with that car. Or the standard mileage rate is you're saying, okay, well, I don't have to keep up with all those receipts. You just have to keep up with the mileage. And then you get a standard mileage rate, which I believe is 68 cents a mile for the IRS. So you take the number of business miles you drove for the year times that rate, and that's your automobile expense.
Talking about deductions such as a vehicle, what are some other types of deductions that a business owner might not necessarily be aware of?
Well, a lot of people do not remember that their cell phone is probably used more for their business than it is personal. But a lot of people have the cell phone plan and they just they just pay it. You need to at least determine how much of that do you use for business. If that's the only number that you have that you give out to your customers, then boom, that's a business expense.
Is there a preferred way to keep books?
It depends on how much activity you're going to have. If you've got a little bit here and there, you could probably just keep it up go the old way and keep it on a piece of notebook paper, but at least you're going to keep it in a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
But then the more activity you have, the probably more likely you need some kind of accounting software to make sure you keep up with everything.
I'll get you out of here on this. We had a banker here a little bit ago, Rance Bryan. He's from Bank of Travelers Rest, and we were talking about business plans. Mm-hmm. And if somebody came in to a banker to talk about getting some capital to start a business, he talked about the importance of having a business plan. Mm-hmm. Do CPAs help with a business plan?
Yeah, CPAs can help with a business plan. I mean, we can talk you through all the things that you need to be considering. Mm-hmm. Because, as I've said before, a lot of people are good at one thing, but they're not necessarily good at everything.
Right.
So it's the things that you're not good at that you need to be aware of and then say, okay, I need to find the person who's good at this that can walk you through that process.
John, good stuff. I appreciate it.
All right, Rick, thank you.
Folks, that's John Price. He is a managing member at Scott & Company, and he is our tax expert. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next expert in just a minute. Welcome back, everyone, to Let's Talk Business South Carolina. It's good to have you here. Today's episode is dedicated to providing information, insight, and advice for small business owners, as well as entrepreneurs who are in the process of starting their own business. This episode is produced in conjunction with the South Carolina Small Business Development Center, and it is brought to you by the Bank of Travelers Rest. At some point, you will likely need some advice from an IT expert. Cyber hacks are more common today than ever before, unfortunately. What do you need to worry about? What do you really not need to worry about? Those are the questions that I'm getting ready to ask our next guest, Linda Mays. She is the general manager at PTG, or Palmetto Technology Group. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It is good to have you here. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Cyber attacks more common than ever before. I'm sure that has something to do with, the technology continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger and makes it easy maybe for hackers to hack into us. I saw a scary stat the other day. I was looking online and saw that 41 in last year, 2023, 41% of small businesses experienced some type of cyber attack. Why are small businesses so vulnerable to this kind of thing?
So I think there's a perception or an assumption that a lot of small businesses perhaps are not investing in their security.
Right.
So, for example, perhaps that they think they're not financially solvent. So that's going to be the last thing that falls off their budgetary requirements is going to be IT and securing themselves against cyber attacks. I think there used to be an adage around, that you're not obscure. Just because you're small, you're not obscure from cybersecurity hacks. And I think that more and more, as people are opening up their own businesses and you hear about the cyber attacks that you've discussed, I think it's more important than ever that people make that one of their number one priorities from in their infrastructure for IT.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it probably in many cases, and you've already said it, it comes down to a budget thing. And oh my gosh, I've got to cut out something. We're not bringing in quite enough money yet, right? So what do I cut? And this seems to be the thing that oftentimes gets cut. One of, the ways to prevent against it is training and making sure that your employees are trained appropriately in things. And there is a cost to that, but that's not too bad. Talk to us about what's involved with training.
So, there's a lot of solutions out there from an IT's perspective that you can join certain software programs, et cetera, that train your employees. So you could do micro quizzes every single week, things of that nature that you can educate your employees. And it needs to be not only, yes, a software solution perhaps, but it needs to also be part of the culture that within your organization to talk about the importance of security with your employees. It's a daily conversation.
Right. If the budget is small, and let's face it, a lot of the folks that are watching today, budgets are small. If the budget is small, what is one thing that has got to be done?
MFA, multi-factor authentication.
Okay.
So a lot of, and I do understand, there's a lot of individuals, it's like, oh, but it's 3 more seconds. It's like, that takes too much time.
Right. Send me a text and let's make sure it's you. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
or an email?
Or an email, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're logging into a particular program and to be, to actually then have to say, hey, you have to prove that it's you.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. That's
right.
actually protecting your employees and your organization. So I would say first and foremost, from an IT solution, from a security standpoint, MFA really needs to happen. I would also continue to say, yes, your education, right? Yeah. Those daily conversations. And then moving on into ensure your antivirus software is up to date and functioning, that your managed detected response, that you've got all of those programs and softwares, that they are up to date and they're ready to go.
Right. I'm thinking that because of COVID, 4 years ago, when people began working remote, that hacking went up probably because people are working from home. They're not necessarily behind a firewall. Is that right?
Yep, that is absolutely right. I think there are definitely some concerns with remote workers from that standpoint, from security. That being said, the communication that the organization has with either fully remote or hybrid employees, that, the same security measures apply, whether you are working remote or you are working from the office. There should be really no difference. Again, we get into MFA, right? We get into encryption, things of that nature. We just need to make sure that those remote workers are following the same exact guidelines.
One of the ways that a hacker can get into your system is through, compromised email. people opening things that maybe they shouldn't, that type of thing. Thoughts about that?
That happens more than I would love to admit.
Yeah.
But there are some methodologies to follow. So first of all, obviously MFA, I'm going to keep preaching that.
Yep.
That's how important it is. But the second thing is following what's called a SLAM method, which is sender, link, attachment, and message.
Okay.
And the whole idea around this is when you get an email, you need to stop, look, ask, and manage.
Mm-hmm.
So I have an email, I'm not really sure, and they can be very subtle.
Right.
Very subtle. They look real. But before you click on that link or before you hit that attachment, to take a step back and go, is this look right?
Right.
Let's stop and let's ensure. And ask the question, hey, coworker, does this look right to you? Mm-hmm. Or it's from someone that you may know. Maybe you send them a different email outside of that. Don't open it and say, hey, did you just send me this?
Right.
But it's really around being thoughtful and taking an approach, a more cautious approach.
What should training, I'll get you out of here on this. We talked about training in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Small business, you might only have 5, 6 employees, maybe you have 8 or 10 or 12, but what should training look like for a company that is that size?
So first and foremost, I think that from a good training standpoint, first of all, not everyone is a good trainer.
Right.
So I think you need to look at who's actually going to conduct that, number one. Number two, any employee, regardless of their roles or their responsibilities, I think they should all go through an onboarding process, which is talking about your culture, mission, vision, values, HR, handbook, things of that nature. And then from there, I think you need to drill down into what their roles are and their competencies and what you expect. Mm-hmm. So setting those measurable timelines, 30, 60, 90 days,
right.
From learning styles to a skills assessment, and really ensuring that you are going a checklist itemized, like what is the expectation for this role? Right. And from there, you give them some time and some measurable items that they can work towards. Mm-hmm. And when they hit that role and that certification, then you're talking about development. Then we can go on to something else and really go to the next level of what that looks like.
Linda, good stuff.
All right.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Folks, that's Linda May. She is the general manager at PTG, or Palmetto Technology Group. Folks, that concludes this episode of Let's Talk Business South Carolina. Once again, I want to thank the South Carolina Small Business Development Center, as well as the Bank of Travelers Rest, who is our presenting sponsor today, for making all of this great content possible. We'll see you next time.